Have you ever paused to wonder how a towering tree stands so strong against the wind? Or how your own body performs complex actions like writing or running with such incredible coordination?
Yeah.
It's not magic. It's the result of life's fundamental building blocks working together in perfect symphony.
Exactly. Every complex living organism, from that majestic tree to, well, your own intricate body, achieves this through an extraordinary level of organization, and it starts right at the cellular level. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the fascinating world of tissues. These are the sophisticated teams of cells that underpin all multicellular life.
Right.
Our aim here is really to give you a crystal clear, structured understanding of this vital topic. We want to extract the core knowledge you need for academic success, whether you're preparing for board exams or, competitive examinations like UPSC, SSC, and others.
Okay, let's unpack this foundational concept then.
Yeah.
We all learned that the basic unit of life is the cell. Now, in very simple organisms, like, say, a single-celled amoeba, one cell does everything: eating, moving, breathing, the works. But how does this scale up? How do we get from that to something as complex as a human being or even a large plant?
That's a crucial distinction, isn't it? Think of it this way. For a unicellular organism, that single cell is a jack of all trades. It has to handle all life functions itself.
Sure.
But imagine trying to build a city with just one person doing everything. It wouldn't be very efficient, would it?
Not at all.
So in multicellular organisms with millions or even trillions of cells, nature employs this brilliant strategy called division of labor. Cells become specialized.
Specialize. Okay, so if cells specialize, how do they then work together effectively?
That's exactly where tissues come in. A tissue is essentially a group of cells. These cells are usually similar in structure, or they work together to achieve a specific common function.
Like a team.
Precisely. They're arranged and designed for maximum efficiency. For instance, in us humans, you have muscle cells forming muscle tissue for movement. Nerve cells group into nervous tissue to transmit messages.
Okay.
And blood, which might surprise some, is actually a connective tissue. It's various blood cells suspended in plasma, responsible for transport oxygen, food, hormones, waste.
And in plants.
In plants, you have examples like the vascular tissues, xylem and phloem, dedicated to conducting water and food throughout the plant body.
So the real advantage is specialization.
Absolutely. The true utility of tissues in multicellular organisms lies right there, in that specialized efficiency. A particular job gets carried out by a dedicated cluster of cells in a definite place in the body. It ensures optimal performance. It's like having specialized departments in a large company, Each one excels at its specific task.
That division of labor analogy really clarifies it. Now, this gets really interesting when we think about how different living things function. Plants are stationary, right? Rooted to the spot. Animals, on the other hand, are constantly on the move.
Big difference.
Does this fundamental difference in lifestyle mean their tissues are also dramatically different, or are there perhaps some underlying similarities?
You've hit on a core biological principle there. Their lifestyles do dictate fundamental differences in their tissue organization. Let's consider plants first.
Okay.
They're fixed, they can't move around. So they need a large quantity of supportive tissue just to maintain their upright structure, to stand tall.
Makes sense.
And interestingly, a lot of the supportive tissue, like the wood in a tree trunk, is actually composed of dead cells.
Dead cells providing support.
Yes. They provide mechanical strength without requiring energy input. Animals, conversely, are highly mobile. They actively search for food, mates, shelter, all of which demands a lot more energy.
Right.
Consequently, most of their tissues are living, metabolically active tissues.
So dead cells in plants for rigid support, mostly living cells in animals for activity and energy use. That's a significant distinction. What about how they grow? Is that different too? Growth patterns are another major divergence. Plant growth tends to be localized. It happens only in specific regions where you find dividing tissues, which we'll talk about. Some of these tissues can divide throughout the plant's life.
Right.
This leads to that classification you often see in textbooks: growing or meristematic tissues and permanent tissues, which have stopped dividing.
And animals.
Animal cell growth, however, tends to be more uniform throughout the body. You don't typically find such distinct localized, dividing, and non-dividing zones like you do in plants.
Interesting.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the structural organization, of organs and organ systems, it's far more specialized and intricately localized in complex animals, compared even to very complex plants. This just reflects their distinct ways of life. Sedentary for plants, active locomotion for animals, and that influences everything. Organ system design, feeding methods, the whole lot.
That makes perfect sense. Let's delve deeper into those plant tissues then, starting with the growth cells you mentioned, the meristematic tissue. Where exactly do we find these growth engines? What makes their cells so special for dividing?
Right, the precise localization of growth in plants is all thanks to this meristematic tissue. Think of them as the plant's perpetual growth factories. They're found only at specific points where new growth occurs.
Like the tips.
Exactly. And the new cells produced by these meristems are initially, well, just like the meristem cells themselves. But as they grow and mature, they undergo a process called differentiation. They specialize. They take on permanent shapes and functions.
Okay, can you tell us about the different types of this meristematic tissue? Where are they located?
Certainly. We classify them based on their region, their location in the plant body. First, there's the apical meristem. This is found right at the growing tips of stems and roots.
So making the plant taller or the root deeper?
Precisely. It's responsible for increasing the length of the plant. Then we have the lateral meristem, often called the cambium. This tissue is found along the sides of stems and roots.
And this increases the width.
Yes, it's responsible for increasing the girth or diameter. Think of how a tree trunk gets thicker over the years. That's the work of the lateral meristem. And finally, there's the intercalary meristem. This isn't in all plants, but where present, it's located near the nodes, the points where leaves attach or at the base of leaves or internodes. It allows for growth in those specific regions, often seen in grasses, enabling them to regrow after being grazed.
Right. And what are the key characteristics of the cells themselves? What allows them to divide so rapidly?
Well, these cells are incredibly active. They possess very dense cytoplasm. They have thin cellulose cell walls, which makes division easier. And they have prominent nuclei controlling the activity.
Okay.
And a key feature, especially important to remember for exams, is that they typically lack vacuoles.
Why is that important?
Well, vacuoles in mature plant cells are often large and store water, food, or waste. Having a large vacuole would sort of get in the way of rapid, continuous cell division. So their absence, or being very small if present, is crucial for the meristem's function. Their whole structure is optimized for replication.
Got it. No bulky storage getting in the way of dividing. So these meristematic cells divide, then they differentiate, lose their ability to divide, and form what we call permanent tissues.
That's the process.
So how do these permanent tissues then function? Let's start with the simple ones, the ones made of just one cell type, and maybe also touch on how plants protect themselves.
Absolutely. That process where cells mature and take on a permanent shape, size, and function is called differentiation, and it leads to various types of permanent tissues. We first look at simple permanent tissues, which, as you said, are made of only one type of cell performing a common function.
Okay, what's the most common type?
That would be parenchyma. These are probably the most abundant plant cells. They're relatively unspecialized living cells with thin cell walls. They often have noticeable intercellular spaces between them.
And their main job?
Primarily food storage. Think of the soft, fleshy parts of fruits or vegetables, potatoes, apples. That's largely parenchyma storing starch or sugars.
Oh, okay.
But they can specialize further. If parenchyma cells contain chloroplasts and perform photosynthesis, we call them chlorenchyma. You find this in leaves, obviously.
Right.
And in aquatic plants, you find a specialized parenchyma called aerenchyma, which has large air cavities. These air spaces provide buoyancy, helping the plant float.
Clever adaptations. What's next after parenchyma?
Next is collenchyma. This tissue provides flexibility combined with mechanical support, especially to growing stems and leaves. It allows parts like young stems or leaf stalks or even tendrils to bend without breaking.
So it's like a flexible support structure.
Exactly, like the plant's flexible scaffolding. Its cells are living, elongated, and characteristically have cell walls that are irregularly thickened, especially at the corners. They usually have very little intercellular space.
Okay, flexible support. What about hardness? What makes plants stiff?
For hardness and stiffness, we have sclerenchyma. This is the tissue that provides rigidity. Imagine the tough husk of a coconut or the gritty texture you sometimes feel in a pear. That unyielding quality comes from sclerenchyma.
Okay.
Its cells are typically dead at maturity. They're often long and narrow, sometimes branched, and their walls are significantly thickened due to a hard substance called lignin being deposited. This lignin makes the walls very strong, rigid, and impermeable. Often there's no internal space left within the cell.
So dead cells again, but for maximum strength this time.
Precisely. You'll find sclerenchyma providing strength in stems, often around the vascular bundles, in the veins of leaves, and in the hard coverings of seeds and nuts. It's like nature's rebar, giving plants incredible structural integrity.
That's a fantastic analogy. So parenchyma for storage, collenchyma for flexible support, sclerenchyma for rigid strength. Those are the simple tissues. Now, how do plants protect their outer surfaces?
For protection, plants primarily rely on protective tissues. The main one is the epidermis.
The skin of the plant.
Essentially, yes. It's the outermost layer of cells, usually just a single layer thick, covering leaves, stems, roots, flowers, fruits, seeds. The cells are typically flattened and tightly packed, forming a continuous sheet with no intercellular spaces.
That is function.
Protection. It acts as a barrier against water loss, mechanical injury, and invasion by parasitic fungi or bacteria. In plants living in very dry habitats, the epidermis can be thicker, and it's often covered by a waxy, water-repellent layer called the cuticle, made of a substance called cutin. This really helps minimize water loss.
Okay, and what about those pores in leaves? Stomata.
Ah, yes, stomata are crucial. These are tiny pores found scattered across the epidermis, especially on leaves. Each pore or stoma is surrounded by two specialized kidney-shaped cells called guard cells.
And they control opening and closing.
Exactly. The guard cells regulate the opening and closing of the stomatal pore. This is absolutely essential for gas exchange, taking in carbon dioxide for photosynthesis and releasing oxygen. It's also the main route for transpiration, the release of water vapor from the plant.
Vital functions.
Yeah.
Anything else about the epidermis?
Yes, one more thing, particularly in roots. The epidermal cells in the root absorption zone often bear long, thin, hair-like extensions called root hairs.
To increase surface area.
Precisely. They vastly increase the surface area available for absorbing water and dissolved minerals from the soil. Now, as plants grow older, especially woody stems and roots, the original epidermis often gets replaced by a secondary protective tissue called cork.
Like the bark on a tree.
Cork forms part of the bark, yes. It arises from a secondary meristem called the cork cambium, which develops in the cortex region. Cork cells are dead at maturity, rectangular, and compactly arranged without intercellular spaces.
And what makes them protective?
Their cell walls become heavily impregnated with a waxy substance called suberin. This makes the cork layer impervious to gases and water, so it provides excellent protection against water loss, injury, and pathogens for the older parts of the plant.
That's a comprehensive look at the simple tissues and protective layers. But for plants to truly thrive, especially larger ones on land, they need efficient internal transport, right? Water up, food down. That brings us to what you call the complex permanent tissues. What makes them complex, and how do they handle this vital transport?
Excellent question. What makes complex permanent tissues complex is that, unlike simple tissues made of only one cell type, complex tissues are made up of more than one type of cell. However, all these different cell types coordinate their activities to perform a common function.
Okay, different players on the same team.
Exactly. The two primary examples in plants are xylem and phloem. Together, they form the vascular tissues, often found bundled together in what's called a vascular bundle. They are essentially the plant's internal plumbing system, and they are absolutely crucial for the survival of plants on land.
The plant's circulatory system, in a way.
You could think of it like that, yes. Let's look at xylem first. Its main function is the transport of water and dissolved minerals upwards, from the roots through the stem to the leaves.
The upward flow.
Yes, the ascent of sap. Xylem also provides mechanical support. It's composed of four main types of elements, or cells. Tracheids, vessels, xylem parenchyma, which are living cells involved in storage and lateral transport, and xylem fibers, which are sclerenchyma cells providing support.
And which ones do the main water transport?
The main conducting elements are the tracheids and vessels. Both are elongated cells with thick, lignified secondary walls. Crucially, they are typically dead cells at functional maturity, meaning their cytoplasm has disintegrated, leaving behind hollow tubes. Vessels are generally wider and are joined end-to-end to form long, continuous pipes, making them very efficient for water transport, especially in flowering plants. Tracheids are narrower and pass water between cells through pits in their walls.
Dead cells forming pipes. Efficient. And the other complex tissue, phloem, what does it do?
Phloem is responsible for transporting food, primarily sugars produced during photosynthesis in the leaves, to other parts of the plant where it's needed for growth or storage. This could be downwards to the roots, upwards to growing buds or flowers, or sideways to storage organs.
So food delivery. Multidirectional.
Yes, translocation in phloem can be bidirectional, unlike the primarily unidirectional flow in xylem. Phloem is also made up of different cell types, typically 4. Sieve elements, which are the main conducting cells, either sieve cells or sieve tube elements. Companion cells, closely associated with sieve tube elements and controlling their function. Phloem parenchyma for storage, and phloem fibers for support.
Are these cells living or dead?
Unlike xylem's main conducting cells, the sieve elements in phloem are living cells at maturity, although they lose their nucleus and some other organelles to facilitate transport. The companion cells, which are right next to them, are metabolically very active and essentially manage the sieve elements. Phloem parenchyma is also living, while phloem fibers, like xylem fibers, are usually dead sclerenchyma cells, providing strength. So it's a mix, but the transport itself relies on living cells working together.
It's amazing how these different cell types cooperate. A truly complex and vital system.
Indeed. Without xylem and phloem, complex terrestrial plant life as we know it wouldn't be possible.
That's a brilliant overview of plant tissues. Now, let's pivot. Let's shift our focus to animal tissues. As we discussed earlier, animals have a very active lifestyle, complex organization.
Very different demands, yes.
So what are the major categories of animal tissues? And perhaps we can begin with those that cover surfaces and connect different parts of the body.
Right. Animal tissues are generally classified into 4 major types based on their primary functions. These are epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscular tissue, and nervous tissue.
Okay, 4 main groups. Let's start with epithelial tissue. What's its role?
Epithelial tissue, or epithelium, serves as the covering or protective tissue in the animal body. Think of it as the body's interface both internally and externally.
Like skin.
Skin is a prime example of an outer covering, but epithelial tissue also lines most internal organs and cavities. It lines the mouth, the digestive tract, the respiratory passages, blood vessels, kidney tubules, lung alveoli. Basically, it forms sheets that cover or line surfaces.
And what's characteristic about how its cells are arranged?
A key feature is that epithelial cells are very tightly packed together. They form continuous sheets, often like tiles on a floor, with very little intercellular space or substance between them.
Why so tightly packed?
This tight packing forms an effective barrier. It helps keep different body systems separate and regulates the passage of substances into and out of the body or between different compartments. Anything entering or leaving the body must cross at least one layer of epithelium.
So different epithelial tissues might look different depending on their specific job.
Exactly. Their structure is closely correlated with their function. We classify them based on cell shape and the number of layers. For example, simple squamous epithelium. Simple means a single layer. Squamous means flat, scale-like cells. These form an extremely thin and delicate lining, perfect where diffusion or filtration needs to happen quickly, like in the air sacs, alveoli of the lungs for gas exchange, or lining blood vessels, where it's called endothelium.
Okay, thin and flat for easy passage. What if protection is needed?
Then you'd likely find stratified squamous epithelium. Stratified means multiple layers. Here, cells are arranged in many layers, providing robust protection against mechanical stress, abrasion, and drying out. Your outer skin, epidermis, is the classic example. The lining of the mouth and esophagus also has this type.
Layers for toughness, makes sense. Any other shapes?
Yes. We have columnar epithelium. Here, the cells are tall and pillar-like, often taller than they are wide. Simple columnar, one layer, is often found where absorption or secretion is important, like the lining of the stomach and intestines.
Ah, like absorbing nutrients.
Precisely. Sometimes these columnar cells have tiny hair-like projections called cilia on their free surface. If they do, it's called ciliated columnar epithelium. You find this lining parts of the respiratory tract where the beating cilia help move mucus and trapped particles upwards, away from the lungs.
Liver cleaning mechanism.
Then there's cuboidal epithelium. Again, simple cuboidal is common, a single layer of cube-shaped cells about as tall as they are wide. These often form the lining of kidney tubules and the ducts of glands, like salivary glands. They provide some mechanical support and are also involved in secretion and absorption. And finally, sometimes epithelial cells become specialized for secretion. They might fold inwards to form structures called glands. This is known as glandular epithelium. Exocrine glands secrete substances like sweat, saliva, or digestive enzymes into ducts, while endocrine glands secrete hormones directly into the bloodstream.
Incredible diversity just within epithelial tissue. Now, what about connective tissue? The name implies it connects things, but you mentioned blood earlier, which seems different. How varied is this group?
It's incredibly varied. Connective tissue is probably the most abundant and widely distributed tissue type in the body. Its main functions include binding and supporting other tissues, protecting organs, insulating, storing energy, and transporting substances.
What's the defining feature then if they're so varied?
The key characteristic is that the cells of connective tissue are typically scattered. They're not tightly packed like epithelial cells. Instead, they are embedded within an extensive, non-living intercellular matrix. This matrix is the key to their diversity.
A matrix.
Yes, the matrix consists of protein fibers, like collagen and elastin, embedded in a ground substance, which can range from fluid to gel-like to solid and even calcified or rigid. The nature of the matrix largely determines the tissue's properties and function.
Okay, can you give us some examples of this variety, starting with blood, perhaps?
Certainly, blood is considered a fluid connective tissue. Its matrix is the liquid plasma, which is mostly water with dissolved proteins, salts, nutrients, hormones, etc. Suspended within this plasma are the cells, red blood cells for oxygen transport, white blood cells for immunity, and platelets for clotting. So its function is primarily transport.
Right. What about something solid like bone?
Bone is at the other end of the spectrum. It's a hard, rigid, connective tissue that forms the body's skeleton. Its cells, called osteocytes, are trapped in small cavities within a very hard matrix. This matrix is composed of collagen fibers embedded in mineral salts, mainly calcium and phosphorus compounds, which give bone its strength and rigidity. It provides support, protection for organs, anchors muscles, and stores minerals.
So, fluid matrix for transport, hard matrix for support. What lies between?
Well, we have things like ligaments and tendons. These are examples of dense connective tissue packed with strong collagen fibers. Ligaments connect bones to other bones at joints. They need to be strong, but also somewhat elastic to allow movement. They have considerable strength, with relatively little matrix compared to the fibers.
Bone to bone. And tendons.
Tendons connect muscles to bones. They need to transmit the strong pulling force of muscle contraction, so they are incredibly strong and fibrous, but they have limited flexibility or elasticity compared to ligaments. Think of them as tough, non-stretching cables.
Got it. Ligaments are stretchy strong, tendons are just strong. What else? Cartilage?
Yes, cartilage. This is a type of supportive connective tissue that's firmer than dense connective tissue, but softer and more flexible than bone. Its cells, chondrocytes, are found in small spaces within a solid rubbery matrix made of proteins and sugars, chondroitin sulfate. Cartilage covers the ends of bones at joints, providing a smooth surface to reduce friction. It also forms structures like your external ear, the tip of your nose, the rings supporting your trachea, windpipe, and the larynx, voice box.
Ah, so that's why you can bend your ear but not your arm bone.
Exactly. That flexibility is characteristic of cartilage. Then there are looser connective tissues. Areolar connective tissue is a very common type. It's found beneath the skin, between muscles, around blood vessels and nerves, and basically fills spaces between organs. It has a loose, irregular arrangement of fibers, collagen and elastin, and various cells in a semi-fluid matrix. It acts like a packing material, providing support and elasticity, holding organs in place, and playing a role in inflammation and tissue repair.
The body's packing peanuts.
Kind of. And finally, there's adipose tissue, which is basically fat tissue. Its main cells, adipocytes, are specialized for storing large amounts of fat, triglycerides, in droplets that fill most of the cell's volume. It's found beneath the skin, insulation, around organs, cushioning, and in bone marrow. Besides storing energy, it insulates the body and protects organs.
That's a truly diverse family of tissues, from fluid blood to solid bone, all connecting, supporting, insulating.
Amazing.
Lastly, let's talk about the tissues that really define animal life, in many ways movement and communication. How do muscular and nervous tissues enable these incredibly complex functions?
These are indeed remarkable tissues, fundamental to animal behavior. Let's start with muscular tissue. This tissue is composed of elongated cells, often called muscle fibers. These fibers are highly specialized because they contain large amounts of contractile proteins, mainly actin and myosin.
And these proteins allow movement.
Yes, the interaction of these proteins allows the muscle fibers to shorten or contract when stimulated. This contraction generates force, which produces movement, whether it's moving your limbs, pumping blood, or propelling food through your digestive tract.
Okay. Are there different types of muscle? I think I remember learning about voluntary and involuntary muscles.
That's right. We classify muscular tissue into three main types based on structure, location, and how they're controlled. First, striated muscles, also known as skeletal muscles, or voluntary muscles. These are the muscles that are typically attached to your bones via tendons.
The ones we control consciously.
Exactly. You use them when you consciously decide to move your arm, walk, smile, or speak. Under a microscope, they show alternate light and dark bands, or striations, which give them their name. The cells, fibers, are long, cylindrical, unbranched, and importantly, they are multinucleate. They have multiple nuclei per cell.
Okay, skeletal, striated, voluntary. What's the next type?
Next are smooth muscles, also called unstriated muscles or involuntary muscles. As the name suggests, you generally cannot consciously control these muscles.
Like digestion.
Precisely. They are found in the walls of internal organs like the stomach, intestines, bladder, uterus, and blood vessels. They control slow, sustained contractions like the movement of food through the digestive tract, peristalsis, or regulating blood vessel diameter. Their cells are spindle-shaped, tapered at both ends, have a single central nucleus, and they lack the striations seen in skeletal muscle.
Right. Involuntary, smooth walls of organs. And the third type?
The third type is cardiac muscle. This is truly unique because it's found only in the walls of the heart.
Only in the heart.
Yes. Its job is to pump blood continuously throughout your life. Like smooth muscle, cardiac muscle contraction is involuntary. You don't consciously tell your heart to beat. Structurally, cardiac muscle cells are cylindrical, like skeletal muscle, but they are branched and interconnected, forming a network. They typically have a single nucleus, like smooth muscle cells. Interestingly, they do show striations, like skeletal muscle, so they blend features of both. Their rhythmic, coordinated contractions are essential for life.
Branched, striated, involuntary, and only in the heart.
Fascinating. So muscles provide the movement, but how does the body coordinate all this? How do we react to the world, send signals? That sounds like the job of nervous tissue.
Absolutely. Nervous tissue is the master controller and communicator of the body. It's highly specialized for detecting stimuli changes inside or outside the body, processing that information, and rapidly transmitting electrical signals or nerve impulses from one part of the body to another.
Where do we find it? It forms the brain, the spinal cord, which together make up the central nervous system, and all the peripheral nerves that branch out to reach every part of the body.
And what's the fundamental unit of this amazing communication network?
The basic functional unit of nervous tissue is the nerve cell, more commonly called the neuron. Neurons are specialized to transmit nerve impulses.
What does a neuron look like?
They have a unique structure. There's a main cell body, which contains the nucleus and most of the cytoplasm and organelles. Extending from the cell body are processes, or fibers. Typically, there are many short branched processes called dendrites, which receive signals from other neurons and transmit them towards the cell body. And usually there's one single long process called the axon, which transmits signals away from the cell body, often over long distances, to other neurons, muscles, or glands.
Long distances. How long?
An individual neuron's axon can actually be quite long. Some axons extending from your spinal cord down to your foot can be up to a meter in length.
Wow. And what we call a nerve.
A nerve, as we commonly use the term, is actually a bundle of many nerve fibers, mostly axons, wrapped together in connective tissue, like wires in a cable.
So how do these neurons talk to each other? How does the signal pass along?
The signal that travels along a nerve fiber is an electrical and chemical signal called a nerve impulse. When an impulse reaches the end of an axon, it triggers the release of chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. These cross a tiny gap, called a synapse, to stimulate the dendrites or cell body of the next neuron in the chain, thus relaying the message.
So it's a chain reaction of signal.
Exactly. This allows for rapid communication throughout the body. This functional combination of nerve tissue for receiving stimuli and sending commands, and muscle tissue for executing responses, is absolutely fundamental to how most animals interact with their environment. It enables us to perceive the world, think, learn, and respond rapidly and appropriately to stimuli, whether it's consciously deciding to move our muscles or an involuntary reflex like pulling your hand away from something hot. You see, understanding tissues really means grasping the fundamental organization of life itself. It's about how these individual cells cooperate, how they specialize and group together to form these intricate structures that enable all the complex functions we see in plants and animals. This concept is truly a cornerstone of biology. Having a clear grasp of it is, well, critical for success in all your academic pursuits and competitive examinations. It builds that solid foundation needed for understanding more advanced topics in physiology and anatomy.
Absolutely, I agree. This deep dive has really laid bare that remarkable division of labor we talked about, hasn't it? From the plant's need for rigid support and efficient transport to the animal's requirements for dynamic movement, sensing, and communication. Having this structured understanding of the different tissue types, their characteristics, and their functions will undoubtedly give you, our listeners, a significant edge in your studies and exam preparation. It helps you move beyond just memorizing names to actually comprehending how life works at this level. Stay tuned for more exam-ready insights and structured breakdowns of complex biological topics. Follow us for more such content. In this deep dive, we covered the following topics: the definition and utility of tissues, a comparative analysis of plant and animal tissues, a detailed look at plant tissues, including meristematic, simple, permanent, parenchyma, collechyma, and sclerenchyma, protective tissues, epidermis and cork, and complex permanent tissues, xylem and phloem, and a comprehensive overview of animal tissues, covering epithelial, connective tissues, blood, bone, ligament, tendon, cartilage, areolar, and adipose, muscular tissues, striated, smooth, and cardiac, and nerve